I want to talk a little bit about, poor energy and why it exists for many of you. And a lot of you that are tuning in, either you are gluten sensitive or you haven't found out that you're gluten sensitive, and that's a possible reason as to why. And so I want to really focus this topic tonight on why that can happen. So I'm going to draw you a picture. And, forgive my art, it's not the greatest, but I think I'm going to get my point across. So this is the intestinal tract, right? So we got up here, if we really draw it out, we've got, the mouth, again, forgive my art, but mouth on one end, anus on the other, right? And your gut is a quarantine zone. It's a tube that goes from your mouth to your anus, and its job is to take the food as you eat it and to churn it down, to break it down into the smallest common denominators of vitamins, minerals, carbs, fats, proteins, water, nucleic acids, and absorb them so that your body can use that stuff to make energy. That's why it's important that you understand this. Now, what happens to a lot of people, especially those of you who have a gluten issue, is that gluten can damage the gut. And so for some people, gluten damages the esophagus. For some, gluten damages the stomach. For others, the small intestine. Now, there's a disease called celiac disease that shows up as small intestinal damage called villus atrophy. And that villus atrophy over time creates malabsorption of vitamins and minerals. And so a person becomes more and more tired, more and more sluggish, more and more fatigued. But gluten can also damage the stomach, and it can reduce your ability to produce stomach acid. And when we have reduced acid, we don't absorb certain nutrients as well. So I'm going to try to categorize this out for you. But vitamin B12, zinc, calcium, magnesium, and iron all require stomach acid to properly be absorbed. And one of the things gluten has been shown to do is it damages the cells that line the stomach. So these little cells that can line your stomach, they're called parietal cells. If you want to look it up. If you're a science nerd and you want to go look it up more, go have at it. But parietal cells secrete stomach acid, and gluten can actually damage these cells, and so it can reduce your capacity for stomach acid secretion. For a lot of people, what happens is not making enough stomach acid feels the same as making too much. So you can actually get the symptoms of what feels like acid reflux or reflux disease when you have damaged parietal cells and you're not producing adequate quantities of acid. And unfortunately, when that happens, many people go to the doctor, and what happens? They get put on an antacid. They get put on something like Nexium or Tagamet or Zantac or one of the other medicines that are known to block acid, even though that's not really truly their problem. I mean, I can pose this question. How many of you have ever been put on a drug to block acid? Did your doctor ever actually test you for low or high acid? Most of them prescribe the medicine based on your symptoms, not based on an objective lab test or an objective measurement. So when you have gluten-induced damage to your parietal cells, reducing your stomach acid production, that comes with several flavors of nutritional deficiency. And when you have these types of nutritional deficiencies, that comes with fatigue. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that here in just a minute. You can also get esophageal damage, and this can lead to erosion. There's actually a condition called Barrett's esophagitis, which is a hyperinflamed esophagus, or esophagus, however you want to pronounce it, where these cells become damaged, and of course that inflammation and that damage leads to people wanting to take acid medication. So think of things like Mylanta, Pepto-Bismol, that because it coats this damaged area. But again, that also causes suppression of stomach acid, leading to some of the malabsorption or the maldigestion of some of the nutrients. And I think I'll add one more to this list because I think it's that important, is protein. Because without stomach acid, you don't get your amino acids. And remember what your amino acids do. Protein breaks down into amino acids, and amino acids make neurotransmitters. So the chemicals that help your brain think and have energy, certain key amino acids like tyrosine and tryptophan These key amino acids, let me spell that right for you, and that's an R. These key amino acids, this one, tyrosine, makes dopamine. It helps you make dopamine, which is an energy or a peaceful amino acid that can, a neurotransmitter rather. And then tryptophan helps you make serotonin. So these are very critical for production of nerve chemicals that give your brain energy. So we'll just use a simple word, nerve chemicals, instead of saying neurotransmitters. And then we also have the B vitamins as a whole. We can add that up here. B vitamins are very important for energy, particularly vitamin B5 and a B vitamin-like compound called choline, because these two together form the other neurochemical called acetylcholine, which is the predominant neurotransmitter that your brain and your body uses to communicate to your other nerve cells, to your muscles, and to your organs. And so when you start running low in these, you actually run low in your capacity to think, and you run low in your capacity to feel energized. So there's different ways to have fatigue. We can have brain fog and we can be lethargic in our head. We can have physical fatigue where we just don't have the physical energy or physical capacity to get up and want to do things. But a lot of it stems from problems that can come from a gluten. And really, let's just be more specific about it. Let's just put in here grain-induced damage to areas of the GI tract. Now, what I wanted to share with you tonight was my experience, because that, I think, matters. See, a lot of doctors online will talk about theory and conjecture and things that might be true in certain scenarios, but I want to give you 20 years of clinical experience at this and what I see day in and day out on a regular basis. Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.